You're tuned in to another episode of Recruitment Entrepreneurs by Recruit CRM. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Recruitment Entrepreneurs by Recruit CRM. And today I have with me the awesome Allison Weiss. Thanks for doing this, Allison. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Yeah, so happy to be here.
And Allison, before we get started and digging deep into like how you do recruitment and your business, can you tell us your story? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was your dream job growing up?
Well, I have a very interesting origin story. So my dad was in the military, and so I lived 13 different places before I turned 15, which I think is a great training ground for being a recruiter because I've just never met a stranger. And I was constantly meeting new people, figuring out, sort of what they were interested in, what I had in common with them, and building relationships.
Was it mostly cities that you lived in, or did you get to live in like farms and the whole shebang?
That's a good question. So I lived in some places that were smaller and more rural, for sure. I actually grew up riding horses as well. So I spent a lot of time on the farm, and working on the farm to defray some of the costs because that's an expensive hobby to have. But also lived abroad as a kid. We were in Germany for, I want to say 4.5 years, from the time I was 18 months old until I was about 4.5 or 5. But yeah, lived all over the place. When I grew up, I think initially I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I saw what veterinarians had to do, and I don't have the stomach for that. I was a little squeamish. So I actually went to college to be an art teacher. I certified K through 12. And then when I graduated, there were no jobs in teaching for specialist sort of subjects.
And when was this? Was this like before the Depression?
2007. Yeah. Right before the Great Recession, I graduated. And thankfully I had been a leader in my sorority. And so I was able to get a coveted spot as a commercial or as a collegiate leadership consultant where I traveled the country. I stayed at the sorority houses and did that for 6 months. And then I found my way into the business world, first as an executive assistant for a family office. And then I sort of fell into recruiting a few years after that.
And just for people that don't know what a family office is, was this essentially like a mini hedge fund or a hedge fund that just had capital from one rich, wealthy family? Right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. So they were the primary shareholders of a company that founded hotels and theaters. And so they had a real estate background. Yep. And they were investing in different companies and starting restaurant franchises and things like that. So it was a really fun job. Yeah.
Cool. And how did you move into recruitment then? How did that happen?
Yeah. So back in the day when you used to put your resume onto Monster and Career Builder and companies could just find you and call you, I was found that way by a company called Farmers Insurance. So they're founded in California, a very big property and casualty and financial services insurance company. And they actually brought me in to interview as an agent. And I said, I don't really think this is for me. And they said, we think you'd make a great recruiter. Would you ever consider that? And I thought, well, I've recruited people into my sorority. I don't really know what recruiting is beyond that, but let me think about it. And so I met some of the other members of the recruiting team and I thought, I might be good at this. They made me an offer I could not refuse. And
was it like a lot more base pay or was it like a crazy commission structure?
It was a lot more base pay at the time. I want to say I got so my first job out of college, I think I was making, I want to say $35,000 or $45,000.
Like a very, very standard fresh out of college
Very
job.
Standard fresh out of college job that truly I had no qualifications for either because I'd gone to school to be an art teacher and was lucky to be making that. But I want to say when I came in, they made me an offer of 51.5. And I thought,
a 50%
I'm rich.
bump.
I can't pass this up. And so I took the leap. I started recruiting agents. And then after 8 months of recruiting agents in the Milwaukee office, which was in a suburb of Milwaukee, they fired my boss and they gave me his job.
Did that include like another pay bump? to get his job?
It did include another pay bump, and it
Wow.
included a car, which was very exciting.
Boom.
Yeah. And two, I want to say I was maybe 27 at the
That's
time.
awesome.
And so I go from being an individual contributor and a member of the team to the leader of the team, and the
Yeah.
politics of that was
Yeah.
a little challenging because all of a sudden I am, one of the youngest people on the team, and now I'm everybody's boss.
Yeah. And you're probably making twice of what you started at in insurance
Yeah.
within like 3 or 4 years.
And I was living in a place where your disposable income went very, very far. It was
Oh,
before I
yeah.
moved to California. And so I had a good lifestyle and I had a good trajectory, and I was being promoted. And that's how I wound up in California, and working out of the home office for Farmers Insurance, and eventually found my way into the agency world after that, because I wanted to learn the sales side of the business, and
And
found.
so another
Mhm.
quick question, right? So
Yeah.
all this while that you were a corporate recruiter or an internal
Yes.
recruiter,
Yes.
was there ever performance-based compensation or commissions the way they have in agencies, where you got paid every time you made a placement, or every time you made a
Yeah.
placement above or beyond a certain number every year? Or was it
Yeah.
just like a flat, like, good job, you'll get a good raise sort of thing?
They had what was called a STIP plan, a short-term incentive plan. And so
Okay.
you had different metrics that you had to hit. And so based on that, the bonus pool would be funded to a certain percentage. And I want to
Got
say
it.
that my target bonus was maybe 20 or 25%. And
Which is
so
pretty solid.
it was pretty solid. And my
Yeah.
ability to hit that was pretty much under my control. So I
Yeah.
felt good about, performing and having some rewards associated with that.
Sure. And how did you move to California then? Was it just a
Yeah.
transfer? Did you ask for it? Did they push you for it? Like, how did it happen?
Yeah, I actually showed up to work on a Tuesday, and there were a lot of executives in the office, and I was sort of
Yeah.
confused. I didn't know what
Yeah.
was happening, and I
Yeah.
was called into a meeting, and I was told, Allison, congratulations, you're being promoted. We've created a new role in the home office for you. We
Okay.
want you to take all of the things that you've done successfully and built in, sort of the state of Wisconsin, and create systems that are scalable that we can roll out to our expansion markets. And I said, oh my goodness. Okay. And they're like, you're starting next Tuesday. I was about to leave on a trip, a vacation with the person I was dating at the time. So they had to tell me. I went on this vacation. I got off one plane. I got on another plane, came to California. And then the first weekend I was really tired. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to stay here. I'll come home next weekend. My boyfriend broke up with me, and I said, I'm moving to California. So.
New life.
Yeah, totally new life. And it was good for me because I think, I had gone to college in Milwaukee. I had a lot of friends in Milwaukee.
Okay.
It was starting to get really small. And so for me, it was sort of taking a next step and a big leap on myself to go to California. And I had some friends out here.
And how did you get your first agency job? Did you go out and try to get it, or did someone reach out to you and they were like, hey, you make so many placements, you can make so much more money at an agency? How did it happen?
Yeah, they found me. They found me and reached out to me, and I thought, oh, this is interesting, because I am a really motivated person. When I had taken the job in the home office, the challenging part was I moved to California, and then they put me on a plane like 80% of the time to places like Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. And so I was traveling a lot more, and I had gotten away from the candidate side of the work, which I actually really loved.
Sure.
And so I thought, here's a way for me to go back and help candidates and help people, which is what I believe recruiting is really at the heart of it, just helping people, and to make more money and to learn something new and be challenged and stretched. And so that's how I wound up on the agency side.
And do you remember how much you ended up making in commission and base, like the first year at an agency? The first full year?
My first full year, I think I was just shy of six figures. I think my
That's
first
solid,
year.
right? And was that more than whatever you were making before that?
That was more because actually when I was promoted to my role in California, it didn't come with an increase.
Got it.
It was sort of a lateral move, and to your dollar shrinks moving to California
Hell
than
yeah.
in Wisconsin. Yeah. So for me, I was feeling the pressure of, paying more than my rent in Wisconsin when I left was $595 a month for
Wow.
a 1-bedroom townhouse.
Yeah.
So
California is
yeah,
different.
California is way, way different. I think I was able to find something for $1,100 or $1,200, but it
Yeah.
was not in a good part of town. And so those costs continued to go up.
That's crazy. And now you did this agency. Did you end up having a year where you broke six figures
I
at
did.
the agency?
I did at the agency. I was there, I want to say maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years. I found pretty quickly that I did not align from a moral standpoint with the folks in that particular office, but also
Sure.
the company as a whole.
Sure.
And I sort of felt like there's a fine line in our business of being successful and turning people into a commodity. And I
Sure.
found that there were some people that I worked with that were not being fully honest about where we were sending people. And that to
Sure.
me, I could not
I get it.
continue.
Totally.
Yeah.
And was that the reason why you started your own agency or your own business? Or did you think that you could make more money doing it by yourself and that's why you moved out? Like, what was the primary reason of moving out?
My primary reason was actually something completely different. I guess so after the agency world, I went back in-house. And was working for a commercial real estate company. And I've been in commercial real estate since 2014. So I found an industry that I really, really loved. And it's vast. There are all these different facets of the business. And I had found myself in big brokerage. So the people who help people to buy and sell or lease space, that's the brokerage world. And that's what I was in. And the brokerage world is a little bit rougher from an environment standpoint. It's a little bit more of a locker room sort of culture, unfortunately, at certain companies. And that was what I was experiencing. And I felt like I had learned everything I could learn from that environment and that part of the business. And I wanted to continue learning and growing. And so I wanted to work with smaller, more mid-sized values and growth-oriented companies that were trying to compete with some of the big companies that I had been working at. So for me, it was an opportunity. And I was asked all the time, like, hey, we're really struggling to recruit this person or to recruit this particular role. Can you help us? And my hands were tied. I wasn't able to really
Accept or reject. Yeah. It wasn't you didn't have the power to do it. But now that you started doing it yourself, did you realize were you happier the first year?
Yes, I was infinitely more happy because I had so much more control over my life.
Was your bank account happier after 12 months? Or was it flat? Or was it a little sad?
So any sort of sales business, and recruiting is a sales business, it takes time to build a pipeline and for things to close and for you to get paid.
Sure.
And so I launched my company, I want to say late summer, early fall of 2019. And so I was starting to be paid in Q1 of 2020. My Q1 crushed my expectations for Q1. It actually was twice what I expected, which was great.
Did you do like 30 or 40 grand or something in Q1?
I did actually closer to 60. I want to say 60 or 70. So I crushed it.
Top tier.
I crushed it. Yeah. Top tier in my first quarter. And I was very excited. But then we know what happened in March of 2020.
Of course.
So thankfully that amount of money was enough to sort of get me through the very quiet times.
And so was the rest of 2020 like literally almost zero or like less than 20 grand like total or
no? That's a good question. I want to say I probably got another 50 grand in the last 2 quarters of the year. No, it's not bad. For your first 12 years or for your first 12 months in business and a pandemic.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I felt really, really proud of myself for surviving, number one.
Yeah. And how's this year going? Is it better than last year?
Oh, this year is significantly better than last year. I would say that the pace of my industry specifically and my niche picked up pretty consistently around Thanksgiving of 2020 and has really sort of carried me through. I want to say if I did 120 in the first year. I'm probably on track closer to 250 and maybe a little bit more than
and
that.
we want to take a pause here, right, Allison? Because this is a huge
Yeah.
achievement, right? Making
Thank you.
$200 or $250,000 by yourself without any infrastructure and support. And no capital, right? It's not like someone wrote you a big
No.
investment check to start this bit. It's not like daddy bought you a McDonald's, right? Like
No.
like it's you're doing all of this yourself. And so, going back into like you setting up this business and you making it work, like what do you think were the top 1, 2, or 3 things that like have gotten you to making 200 grand a year and hopefully more in the coming years? Like
Sure. And I want to be clear too. I'm talking about revenue numbers that are gross and not net.
Of course.
But just I would say, one, I was already in the space. I was already a name that people knew. I had relationships that had been built up over years and years. And there was sort of a pent up demand, I think, for people wanting to work with me. I would say a lot of that was due to how present I was on social media, primarily LinkedIn, but also, building Instagram, starting a podcast, those sorts of things tremendously helped me from a business development standpoint. I think also, I do have support in the form of a virtual assistant. I'm really lucky to have found someone who really fits.
And for people that are also like, oh, Allison has a virtual assistant, well, how does that work? Like, how did you find her? How much does it roughly cost? And you can throw a range there.
Yeah.
And how do you manage that relationship versus like a regular, actual, like, physical assistant coming into the office?
Yeah, right next to you, sort of recruiter. And that was my challenge. Like I had some fits and starts trying to find people to work with me. And I do think I do things a little bit differently. And my industry also is one where you have to develop almost a third language. Commercial real estate has its own sort of terminology and acronyms and all of that. But anyhow, so I actually was introduced to a company called Rocket Station. They are a BPO. They have a ton of clients in the real estate and commercial real estate industry. So I had a comfort level that they understood, at least to some degree, what I was doing. I went through an interview process with them to sort of scope out what the role would be. And right now I would say it's a really strong combination of sourcing. So helping this person to understand how to research and build candidate pipelines and do some of the earlier stages of outreach.
And where does this person physically sit? Are they in America? Are they in Asia? Are they in like Philippines or India or something?
In the Philippines, yes.
Got it. And you don't pay them directly, right? You pay them through the BPO company?
I pay them through the BPO. I'm able to pay bonuses and things like that, also directly to the individual through the company.
And how much does something like this cost? Is it like $1,000 a month? Is it less? Is it more? Like,
yeah. So they have sort of a flat rate. So you're paying if you're doing 20 hours a week, it's $12 an hour.
Okay.
If you're committing to 40 hours a week, it's $10 an hour. So I pay $1,600 a month to have this dedicated resource, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
And would you say, is that on the upper end of what these services cost or the lower end or right in the middle?
It's not, I would say it's towards the top 3/4 of the cost, but part of the reason that I chose this particular company, Rocket Station, is I again didn't want, I don't know. I was very sensitive to the fact that I didn't want to take advantage of a person or pay a company that was taking advantage of people. And so they have a great sort of setup for how these people receive benefits very similarly to an employee in the US would, and the training that they receive and the culture of the organization. Also, for me, as a business owner who's pulled in a lot of different directions, the management of this person isn't 100% on my shoulders. I have an operations manager that I work with that works with me and Jaja to make sure that we are in sync and that everything is going smoothly. And it's just been a tremendous experience. She allows me. Go ahead.
And so, Matt, and I'm going to follow up on what you're talking about, what she's going to allow you to do. But essentially, net, you're going to pay her about 8 to 10% of what you make this year gross. And so
Yeah,
do you feel that she has helped you increase your productivity by say 20 or 25%?
absolutely. And maybe even
Okay.
more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe even more than that. I think too, you see that I'm in this RV
Yeah.
life world and I'm traveling around the country. For me, I don't know that I would have the comfort and the ability and the freedom to do that if I didn't have someone who sort of had my back in the way that she does. So I
Got
do
it.
feel really like she is my partner in helping me to run my business and also live my life the way that I want.
Sure. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And
Yeah.
Allison, what advice would you like sort of give someone who comes to you and they're like, hey, I want to do what you're doing?
Yeah. I would say start. I'm a person who was sort of in research mode and knew she wanted to be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur for 10 years. And I was sort of struggling and unhappy inside of big companies and corporate bureaucratic environments. I think for me, I didn't do it the right way. I didn't put
Yeah.
6 months of expenses aside. I did not whatsoever. And so I think
How much did you put aside? Just so people know, right?
I
How
didn't put
hard did you
anything
go?
aside. I didn't put anything aside.
How did you
Truly,
survive? How did you survive?
truly. So I survived because I had good credit and I had credit cards and I
That's crazy.
honestly I'm telling you, I did not do it the way that experts did, but I also got to a certain point where I was having such a bad experience. I felt like I had no other choice
Got it.
than to start my own
Yeah,
company.
you
And
were like,
so,
this job sucks. It's destroying my brain and my soul a lot more
yeah,
than the
yes.
money's worth. I
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and it's worked out.
It
It's worked out
has.
super well.
Yeah, it has worked out super well. And I think part of the reason that it has worked out super well is that I have done everything possible in the 10 years prior of my career to help as many people as possible. And so when
Okay.
I needed help and when I was launching a business, people wanted to help me. So as much as you can
Karma.
plant seeds, exactly, it's all karma. It's all
Yeah.
karma. And people really showed up in a massive way for me when I launched.
And what are the growth plans now? So obviously you have a great
Yeah.
life. You're traveling the
Yeah.
country. You're living in your RV, which I'm guessing you're expensing to your business, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so is the goal to just live this life and like make the good money, or like is the goal to like scale this up and take all this money you're making, hire more people, and like build like a
Yeah.
$1 million recruitment business? Is that the goal? Like, what's the goal and why?
Yeah. So I think more about my industry and the things that I want to change. So if my industry was a person, from a demographic perspective, it would be an older, 55 plus white male.
Okay.
And that's being
Yeah.
totally honest.
Yeah.
Like if you
Yeah.
look at the
Yeah. Yeah.
demographics, it's
Yeah.
not a space where you see a lot of women in
Yeah.
leadership positions. There's not a ton of diversity in our business.
Sure.
And actually the statistic in terms of, generations, we have 4% of our industry right now between the ages of 19 to 24, which
Yeah.
is a measly small number.
Yeah.
And 46% of our industry is 55 and over. So we're about to fall off a demographic cliff. We
It's
need
crazy.
young people, we need more diverse perspectives in our business. And so I want to scale up the company, but in such a way that we're able to change and really, I feel like modify the face of the industry to reflect the communities that we actually work in and serve. So
And make more
I'm
money.
and make more money, of
And make
course,
more.
like the more money, the more good I think we can
Of course.
do.
Of course.
And two, I think, our industry has a very low barrier to entry and is a great place to create generational wealth. So if I can train recruiters who have their hearts in the right places, who want to
Yeah.
make the industry a better place, and they in turn can invest in real estate for themselves, like they're going to change not just their families, but future
Yeah.
generations.
Of course. Totally. And what's the one thing you hate about running a recruitment business? What
You-
sucks?
yeah, you know, I feel like recruiting sometimes is a very much what have you done for me lately kind of
Yeah.
business. Like the second that you've made that placement, you don't even have half a second to celebrate because you're already behind on 6 other things.
Yeah. It doesn't
Um,
compound. You start with zero every
yeah.
month, right? Like you're like, what did you
Yes.
do this month? Right? Like,
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think it's hard to take a vacation because
yeah.
you're never in the clear. You've always
Yeah.
got things that are in some stage that need a lot of attention. So that for me is probably the hardest. I'm a to-do list person. I like to
Of
cross
course.
things off and feel like I've accomplished everything I need to at the end of the day. I've probably never felt that way in my life.
Got it. And last question, right? Like, or last couple of questions. What's advice you would give your 20-year-old self?
Um,
This is like
that's funny.
sophomore or junior year of college, something like that.
You know, I think I think my advice would be you don't have to have it all figured out right
Okay.
now and everything will be okay. I
Okay.
obviously made a choice to go down a certain career path that as soon as I was ready to do it, I didn't have the option. And so
Yeah.
I think the more flexible we can be and the more open-minded we can be, the better off and the happier we'll be in the long run.
And sure. And last question now, Allison.
Mhm.
What's Allison's life like? Like, do you have dogs, cats, a
Yeah.
boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife? Like, what's going
Yeah.
on?
I have two dogs, one who travels with me.
That's cool.
His name is Juno. He's a 13-year-old husky rescue. I have another husky mix that my parents take care of because she's 14 and doesn't like the road
Okay.
anymore. But
Got it.
yeah, just seeing the country, traveling all over, with a focus on beaches. I love the coast. So East Coast, West Coast, all over the country.
That's awesome, Allison. I'm sure people listening to this would have been like, hey, this is sort of the life I want, right? I want to make good money. I want to be in a cool
Yeah.
RV, travel around the country, talk to great
Yeah.
people, and have a good life.
I think it's incredibly available to you. And when I had the
Yeah.
idea for it, it didn't make sense to me. And sometimes my best ideas and the best sort of nudges I get from the universe don't make sense. But when you
Sure.
follow them, you sort of start to understand that, it's all meant to be. You just have to have the courage to go out and do it for yourself.
You just have to have the courage to go out and do it for yourself. There we have it, guys. That's Allison Weiss. Allison, thanks a bunch for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be with you.
And that's all for today's episode of Recruitment Entrepreneurs. Like and follow us if you liked today's episode and want to hear more stories from the world of recruitment.